Naming acids and bases. There are two parts to this worksheet. In the first part, you're going to name the acid or base. And remember, you first need to look for whether it's an acid or a base to know how you should name it. If it's a base, then you just name it as an ionic compound. So Na is sodium and OH is hydroxide, so all I have to do is write sodium hydroxide. If, however, you have an acid where it starts with H, when you look through here and you find those, make sure that you name them using the acid naming rules. And there's a review of that back here in your reading material. If you have a binary acid, okay, a binary acid, that means it has two elements in it. Then you're going to put hydro and then the root of the negative ion. So for chlorine, that'd be chlor, for fluorine, fluor, etc. And then put ic at the end. So hydro something ic acid if we only have two elements. So HCl would be hydrochloric acid. Don't forget to put the word acid at the end. It is important to do so. If we have a ternary acid, that means that it has more than two elements. So in this example, we have H2SO4, so that's 1, 2, 3 elements, H, S, and O. And we look up the negative ion on our polyatomic ion chart. And here's SO4, which is sulfate. And if it ends in ate, then it becomes ic. Now I know that in this case it's sulfate, and we'd think it would be sulfic acid, but we do add in the UR from sulfur to make sulfuric acid. So for sulfuric and sulfurous, we do this, and we also add in the OR for phosphate and phosphite. Here's phosphate, and we change this ate to ic again in an acid, but it's not phosphic acid. We would call it phosphoric acid, or for phosphite we'd call it phosphorus acid. So for sulfur and phosphorus, those two are exceptions to the rule where you don't just add the IC, but you do also add in a couple extra letters just to make it flow better. So H2SO4 became sulfuric acid because sulfate, the ate ending, becomes ic, sulfuric acid. And here, if you have a polyatomic ion that ends in ite, like nitrite, then we change that ite to us. So instead of nitrite, we have nitrous acid. And in a ternary acid, we do not say hydrosulfuric or hydronitrous, because the hydro is only used in a binary acid with two elements in it. So name your acids using those rules here. And then you're going to do the opposite at the bottom, where instead of naming them, you're going to take the name and turn it back into the formula for the acid or base. The bases are fairly simple because you're just going to look at the names of the two things and put them together. But you do have to look up the charges of your ions and then make sure that your compound is a neutral compound, that the charges add up to 0 by using the crisscross method if you need to. So these acids that I see starting with hydro, I know that I'm going to have hydrogen and one other element. I will not use the polyatomic ion chart for these. If I have an acid that does not start with hydro, then I know that I need to use my polyatomic ion chart to figure out which polyatomic ion will be combined with H to make my acid. So anything that says acid on it should start with H in your formula. And do look up the charges. H is always going to be a +1. And look up the charges of your negative ion to figure out if you need to cross them over to put subscripts for your acid formula. So same thing with the hydroxides. Look up the charges. Remember, this in parentheses tells you that this cobalt has a +2 charge, so you already know the charge of cobalt in this one, so you know you need to cross those over because hydroxide only has a -1 charge, so that you can make your compound here. So names here, formulas here, and if you do still have any questions, please do come ask.